Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are about midway through the 2035 season, and it's been a good year for the Royals. Have a 3-game lead on the Twins and a 3.5-game lead on the Guardians in the powerful American League Central. There's 6 50-win teams in baseball, and 3 of them are in the AL Central thus far this year. If you remember our last episode, kind of finished with a couple of cliffhangers, most notably Bobby Whit Jr., who's possibly having the best season of his career with a .324 batting average, third in the AL, 1.024 OPS, and a 5.2 WAR. But unfortunately, we're waiting to hear an injury diagnosis on him. He's missed pretty significant times, about a month plus in each of the last 2 seasons. Obviously hoping that his season is not ruined by this pending injury, but we should find that out very shortly. And the other thing we did at the end of the past episode was we made an offer to the international amateur free agent Yvonne Pedraza, good-looking young starting pitching prospect. So we will see what happens with Pedraza and what happens with Bobby Whit Jr. In very short order here. As I mentioned, it's been a really nice season for the Royals, who rank first in the American League in runs scored and first in the American League in runs allowed at this point. So even though we've been playing a little worse each month as the season's gone on, still has been a great year for the Royals. So here's hoping that Bobby Whit Jr.'s injury ends up being relatively minor. And unfortunately, the news on Bobby Whit Jr. not good, out with a bicep strain for 5 to 6 weeks. You can see, kind of looking through his stats here, that each of the last 2 years he's only played 123 and 122 games, and the 5 to 6 week injury that he's going to suffer right now means he'll probably be lucky to get to those totals for this year. So unfortunately, 4 of the last 5 seasons, he's going to have had pretty significant injuries. Hopefully it's not something that will have any impact on him by the time we get to the playoffs, and hopefully it's not something that will keep us from making the playoffs and winning the division. But in our effort to hopefully get Bobby Whit Jr. to the Hall of Fame over these final years of his career, certainly having a season where he won an MVP award would have been huge. Second Silver Slugger would have been huge, and probably pretty unlikely he's going to be able to get either of those. You can see he has been a perennial All-Star and a perennial Gold Glove winner for us. Also won a Rookie of the Year, 3 World Series titles, and he's been the MVP in 3 postseason series. So certainly still, whether or not he plays a full year this year probably isn't going to ultimately be the determining factor in whether or not he makes the Hall of Fame. But it did seem with a 5.2 WAR through his first 78 games played that certainly had potential for this to be an extremely special season. And you can just see that with the insane OPS plus and WRC plus that he has. So hopefully he'll keep hitting as well as he did over the first half of the year when we do get him back in late August. And a separate bad piece of news for the Royals, starting pitcher Yvonne Pedraza prefers the Braves offer, so we are going to have to figure out who we want to focus on as an international amateur free agent. You can see that the other 5-star players, at least according to our scout, are still out there. Just a matter of figuring who we want to throw a $5 million offer at this point. And I think we're going to try to go back to the starting pitching well with Javi Toledo. Like the fact that he's durable, excellent stamina, good personality with high leadership, work ethic, and intelligence. He's 16 years old, already throwing in the low 90s. His control looks like if he does have an issue, that will be it. If these 3 pitches develop, certainly looks like he can be a pretty effective major league starter. So we are going to go ahead and offer him $5 million. And we will see what happens. And with Bobby Whit Jr. now on the IL, I think we're going to have to bring up Mcneil. Not that it's a hard thing to do, but he's having another brilliant year in AAA, hitting .331 with 24 homers and 257 at-bats a year after he hit .348 with 27 homers and more of a full season down there. Did not hit well with the Royals at the end of last season, and he kind of got caught up in a numbers game for us this year, and I wanted to make sure he was getting regular playing time. But hopefully with Bobby Whit Jr. out, we'll be able to find some playing time for Mcneil at the major league level. You can see Aragueto Laziosi, our starting second baseman, and now Bobby Whit Jr., our starting third baseman, are both out. And Ben Borgman, our ace, fortunately we just started a rehab assignment for him a couple days ago. Hasn't pitched since early April, so given that he's 33 years old and he's already fragile, we want to kind of work him back in. So he'll probably have, I would think, at least 3 starts down in Omaha before we're willing to bring him back up. Certainly, we're a little weak or a little light on infielders right now. You can see we got Alvarado, Ojeda, Flores, Dominguez, and Fonseca up. With the fact that we brought up Mcneil, we may end up regretting that, but willing to give Mcneil a chance. And you can see that fortunately he's at least in the starting lineup now as our DH against left-handed pitchers. It looks like he's not going to be in regularly against right-handed pitchers, which is a little bit disappointing, but we could obviously change that if we needed to. Javi Medina, though, who is another young player that we want to get playing time, our Rule 5 acquisition, who looks like he's going to be a potentially really interesting bat, is the guy who's starting at DH against right-handers. So we want to get both of those guys at bats, and with Avelar in right, Vasquez in left, Ojeda at first base, and Velasquez in center field. There's just not a lot of obvious spots for us to be playing these young guys. So we will see what they can do. Hopefully, hopefully get Mcneil some at-bats over the next few weeks, even if he's not a regular starter for us, and get a little better sense of what he can do at the major league level, because clearly he doesn't have anything left to prove at AAA. And one of our favorite players on the team who's having a really nice year and has had a really nice career for us, Caleb Lagerwell, 12-game streak with quality starts. So he's having a fantastic year for us this year. You can see 11-6 with a 2.91 ERA. He has been the game-winning pitcher in Game 7 of 2 of our 3 World Series titles. And, I guess he's just been named an All-Star. I hadn't looked at the All-Star teams yet, but I figured he was on track for a All-Star appearance this year. So we'll check in on that in just a moment. But we do know that we've got at least one All-Star with Caleb Lagerwell. And we did end up signing Javi Toledo, which is our international amateur free agent. So although we did lose out on Yvonne Pedraza, our top choice, hopefully Toledo ends up being a solid starter for us, 5, 6, 7 years down the line. And speaking of the All-Star rosters, they were announced yesterday, so let's take a look in the American League. As we know, Caleb Lagerwell having a great year on the All-Star team. Jesus Bibbs, who was a free agent acquisition from us this offseason, 1-2 record, 3.28 ERA over 49 and a third innings, so a solid left-handed middle reliever. And then a third Kansas City pitcher, Felipe Tejada, who we picked up in trade this past offseason to be our closer. 3-2 record, 20 saves, 2.62 ERA. So one of the longest tenured Royals, along with 2 newcomers, Bibbs and Tejada, are our all-star pitchers. Angelo Bolden, second all-star appearance for our young catcher. He's 28 years old. I guess he's really not that young anymore, but having a solid year, 288 batting average, 7 homers, and he is a good, solid defensive catcher. So a second All-Star award for Angelo Bolden. Not surprisingly, Bobby Whit Jr., despite the injury, named to the All-Star team. And then Angelo Velasquez, also named our young center fielder, named to his second All-Star team. First time since 2031, which was his first full year in the majors, hitting .309, 18 stolen bases, 104 OPS plus, 105 WRC plus, and he has as good range as anybody in center field at this point. So hopefully at some point he'll be in line for a Gold Glove award. You can see this year his zone rating and his defensive efficiency are both pretty high, actually pretty high range, not surprisingly, of the number of opportunities he's getting. So hopefully we'll see a Gold Glove award for Velasquez down the line. And I did miss, I was wondering where Alex Vasquez was, although his batting average is not vintage Alex Vasquez at .294. You can see with 23 home runs, he's already hit more home runs this season than he hit in either of the past two seasons. So not a surprise to see the left fielder also named to the All-Star team. So 7 All-Stars for the Kansas City Royals: Velasquez, Vasquez, Whit Jr., Bolden, Tejada, Bibbs, and Lagerwell for your 2035 season. And as we're getting ready for the first-year player draft, longtime starter/closer Tyler Bosma reached out looking for an extension. I think it's probably unlikely that we're going to look to lock him up early. Having a bit of a down year this year with a 6-6 record, 4.66 ERA, kind of a below-average pitcher if you look at either his ERA plus or his FIP minus. And you can see, his movement is down, his control's average at this point. His stuff is still respectable, but he's a fragile pitcher who's going to be 36 years old by the time we're hopefully playing in the World Series. Definitely not a contract that I feel that we really want to chase at this point. We'll see what things look like after the season. Just for the heck of it, we'll see what he's looking for, but shouldn't be too much money. Yeah, $4.6 million a year over 2 years. That's definitely a contract we're not that interested in giving a soon-to-be 36-year-old Tyler Bosma. And the Royals will be picking 32nd this year. We did win the World Series last season, but both the Angels and the Mariners finished slightly ahead of us in the standings, even though we obviously progressed farther than either of them in winning it all, but still not going to be picking till the late stages of the first round, which has, I guess it's good that that's been the situation that we've been in over most of the past decade, but obviously at some point it would be really cool to have a top pick and add a real potential rock star to our team, but is not the case this season, so we'll see who ends up falling to us at number 32 in the draft. And at least according to our scout, Travis Lee, you can see there's about 10 players with 4-star or higher potential, including a bunch of starting pitchers. Travis Lee thinks that Javi de la Vigna is the best pitching prospect in the game. He views him as a 5-star potential pitcher. Totally agree that with that cutter and fastball, if they both get into 70s, he's going to have incredible stuff, and it looks like his movement and control are also strong. The issue is that if that changeup doesn't develop a lot more than we think it can, he's really a 2-pitch pitcher, which means he's probably going to be most effective as a reliever. So not a shock to see the 5-star player falling this far because he's really a reliever. Rick Meza certainly looks like this right-hander could be more of a real, true starting pitcher prospect. I can see it looks like he can potentially have 4 pitches that would be above average, including an excellent fastball. He's got good stamina. He's 18 years old, and he's already throwing in the mid to high 90s as a power pitcher. Looks like he could have really good stuff, really good movement, and acceptable control. Signability is going to be hard. He's looking for $8 million. which is way over slot. But you may remember from previous episodes that given that we hit a lot of money this off season, we did actually put $18 million into our budget, even though our slot amounts are $7.5 million. So we've actually got money set aside, as well as the money that we have for free agents that we could potentially use to sign some players over slot in the first few rounds of this draft. So from that perspective, I would say Meza definitely looks like a live prospect for us to think about, but we're certainly going to take a look at these other 8 4-star players and take a look at them before we make some decisions. Catcher Kenneth Belk, don't love the low work ethic. Good defensively, not a great arm. Looks like he's going to always struggle to hit. He's durable, but he's a college player, 21 years old. Looks like he could certainly have a pretty good bat for a catcher. I think we prefer Meza over him. Jerry Curry, another starting pitching prospect. Like the fact that he's durable, also a high schooler. Fly ball pitcher, not throwing that hard yet. Certainly potentially has a 3-pitch repertoire, which looks solid. Really like the fact that he's going to have really good control and really good movement if everything works out. He's also a player who's looking for a lot of money with a big bonus demand. Obviously we've got a lot more players to look at, but with the money that those two guys are looking for, I don't think it's inconceivable that one of them could fall to us towards the end of the second round if teams don't have a lot of money to spend. Another starting pitcher, Raul Dominguez. Love the stamina. He's a college pitcher, a little more developed. You can see he's going to have a nice arsenal of 5 potential major league level or better pitches. Solid stuff, movement, and control. Definitely an interesting prospect. I'd probably lean towards either of the 18-year-olds over Dominguez, but certainly he merits some consideration. Ryan Fields, another catcher, like the high work ethic, like the fact that he's durable. He's below average defensively and even a below average arm, at least what we're thinking right now, and not going to make a ton of contact. Will hit some homers, potentially draw some walks. Interesting prospect. I don't like him as much as I like the pitchers. First baseman Zach Flowers. Looks like he could have a decent bat. Not much going on defensively with him. He's 21 years old already. Doesn't excite me that much after we took a excellent first baseman in Ojeda in last year's draft. Another catcher. Very stacked draft in terms of the catchers and the starting pitchers, at least in terms of what our scout thinks. Julio Nunez, above average, slightly defensively, but a pretty miserable arm. Looks like he could certainly hit enough at the major league level. He's durable, good leadership. Not all that excited about him. And for our first pick, though, Jose Stallings, another starting pitcher. Kind of like the profile here, another 18-year-old, another one looking for just an insane amount of money, though. So I think it's conceivable that one of these pitchers could fall to our spot in the second round just because they're looking for so much money, which would be potentially a really good opportunity for us, given that we've got a lot of money right now. And then Shiping Zhu, like his durability, his bonus demand is just off the charts. But you look at his potential pitching skills, and they're kind of off the charts too. Could have 5 above average pitches if everything develops. Certainly enough stamina to start. So good, solid stuff, excellent movement, and good control. The issue, again, is he's looking for $11.5 million. So I like a lot of these pitchers that are looking for big money, and I think that there's a chance that some of them, whether it's a Curry, a Stallings, or a Zhu, will fall to us in the second round. But right now I think I'm going to go with Rick Meza. Pretty clean prospect, does have 4 pitches, and they look like they're going to go from above average to excellent if they completely develop. Has the stamina to be a good starter. He's faced an average competition level. I think it's possible that we're going to go back-to-back starters if one of these other guys falls through or falls to us in the second round. Well, we'll see what our scout says. Who does he recommend? He recommends Jose Perez, who is someone who we haven't even talked about yet, a right fielder out of Vanderbilt. Does potentially have one of the nicer bats that we've seen. Not much of a glove. He's really a left fielder, and that's really the only spot you'd want to play him. I guess we could play him at first if we have to. Don't love the personality there, so I'm definitely going to disagree with what Travis Lee recommends, and we are going to make Rick Meza our first-round draft choice here in 2035. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that here in the second round, in none of those pitchers fell who were looking for the crazy money. So there must have been some teams that had some money to spend. So the only two four-star prospects left that we already talked about were the catchers, Ryan Fields. We definitely did not love his poor defensive ability, and Julio Nunez. A little better defensively, but not someone that we were all that excited about. So we'll see what our scouting director recommends. He actually recommends Nunez. We're going to spend some time looking at some of these other players before we make a final decision, but won't force you to sit and listen to my thought process on all of them as I go through them. And I'm not really thrilled with either of the catching prospects, Field and Nunez. The best thing I could say about both of them is that they're young and they're durable. The two prospects I'm most interested in, starting pitcher Cortez Ronquillo, definitely looks like he could be a solid major league starter if these three pitches develop. The changeup doesn't look like it's ever going to do much, but if he's got a fastball, a curve, and a splitter, he can definitely do well. Has pretty good stamina. Like the fact that he's durable. His competition level is only fair, but he's one of the ones I'm thinking about. And then the guy who is my other candidate is shortstop Danny Fernandez. Profiles as potentially a respectable major league hitter. He's not going to walk much, which isn't great, although he's not going to strike out a lot. But it looks like he could be an above-average contact, home run, and gap power guy. He's got some speed. He's also a pretty versatile player defensively. He's listed as a shortstop now, but he could certainly play any position in the infield with that 6'4" height. And you can see he'd also be a pretty versatile player who could play any outfield position. Wouldn't really want him in center field, but he could play there in a pinch. So just a very versatile player, solid bunter, got a little bit of speed. Not the best base runner in the world, but still an interesting prospect. But I'm torn, between Fernandez, the shortstop, and Ronquillo, the starting pitcher. You know that I always tend to be biased towards the pitching. And I like the fact that Ronquillo's already throwing close to 95 miles an hour here as an 18-year-old. I just think he could potentially be a more valuable player than Fernandez. I think in a perfect world, Fernandez is a super utility guy. He could certainly be a starting second baseman or third baseman. He could be a starting shortstop for a lot of teams. But I don't think he's got quite the upside as Cortez and Ronquillo. So we are going to add another pitcher here and go ahead and bring on Ronquillo with our second round draft choice. And interesting that here in the third round, Ryan Fields, one of the catchers, is still out there. Unfortunately, the shortstop prospect that we really liked is gone. Scouting director recommends we go to Ryan La Bazooka Fields, who is a switch-hitting high school catcher. Not that great defensively, does have a good work ethic. Got a little pop, but not the best contact hitter. He is durable. We've talked about him in the past. He's a respectable prospect, and I guess for the third round, what more are we going to get? Ernesto Reza, kind of a more modest prospect, very average bat, very average defensively. Fields, I just don't love the glove. And, left field, maybe right field, maybe first base are the only positions he can play. And I just don't think he's got enough of a bat. The only thing that he's really going to be exceptional at is his eye, which is certainly important to be drawing some walks. But I don't love him. And given that we view Fields just as a bat, since we don't really want to be playing him at catcher, I think I'm going to go with Jerry Elisea, who in my opinion profiles as having a better bat, pretty good contact hitter, who looks like he can be a little bit above average in just about everything else. He's durable. Now he's a DH, he's a first baseman right now, but he's really just a bat. But if that bat fully develops, I think he's a more useful piece at the major league level than a mediocre defensive catcher. I don't love bringing on another guy who's listed as a first baseman and who realistically is a DH at the major league level. Even though he's only 18 years old, you're just like, yep, this guy's a DH. But that bat does have potential to be a useful left-handed bat. So we're going to go with Elisea. And Ryan Fields now is dropped to our second, third round pick here. Scouting director still recommending him. And at this point, I guess I'm willing to take a flyer on him. I do like the fact that he's durable. Do like the fact that he's got a good work ethic. Maybe he can get a little better defensively. And maybe the bat becomes better than we think. At this point, with our second pick in the third round, willing to follow what Travis Lee recommends and bring Fields on board. And as we get towards the end of July, got some good news and some bad news on our injured list. Ben Borgman banged up again. He had pitched 3 games in AAA, was respectable down there, but he's been out for over a week with a calf strain now. So we're actually going to just be real cautious and put him back on the 15-day IL. Can see that it's backdated for a few days. We want to make sure that he's healthy for the playoffs. Would love to have him back for a good chunk of the regular season, but we're still performing pretty well. Up 3.5 on the Twins and 4.5 on the Guardians in the division now. And we've still got the best record in baseball, and we've been doing that without our ace. So if we miss him for another few weeks, I think that's fine. Second baseman Arrighetto Laziosi is ready to come back. You can see he was 4 for 11 in 3 games down in Omaha, coming off of that 60-day IL stint. So I think he is ready to bring back to the major league roster at this point. Checking in on Mike Mcneil. He's hit a little better this time around in the majors, 240 batting average, 2 homers, 4 ribbies. Rodolfo Falcone, who's the guy who took McNeil's roster spot, hitting 287. We're just not playing him very much anymore. So I actually think until Bobby Whit Jr. comes back, Billy Dominguez is a pretty important guy for us to have. So we're going to send Falcone down and hopefully can continue getting McNeil at least a little bit of playing time. So Falcone is going to go down to AAA Omaha. Laziosi back into the lineup. Let's see what Bobby Crosby want things to look like. Alvarado and Dominguez are the only players who aren't getting regular playing time, which is fine. although I think I may put Alvarado in for Ojeda against left-handers just so we continue to get him a little playing time as well. Ojeda's been struggling a bit as of late. He does have the 27 homers and 370 at bats, but his batting average just 233. So he's a guy who's been developing at the major league level. You can see at this point, looks like he's probably completely developed, even though he's only 22 years old. Has been a rapid move through the farm system for our first round pick from last year. But Alvarado is still a relatively important player for this team, too. He can play both first and second for us, got a good personality, and a respectable hitter. 276 this year, 5 homers, 134 at-bats. Want to make sure that he still gets a little bit of consistent playing time for us. And we're spending a little time looking through our minor league system. Jorge Lebron, one of our top prospects, another potentially really interesting corner outfield bat. Went up to Double-A at the end of last year and has been in Double-A this whole year, hitting .358 down there with 21 homers and 60 runs batted in. So he is certainly ready to head up to Triple-A. You can see at the major league level, or at the AAA level, we've got LeBron, Orlando Soto, Ishmael Zavala, Rodolfo Falcone, and Israel Gutierrez. So we've got a lot of pretty good outfielders at AAA even. And as we've talked about, we've got a glut of outfielders at the major league level, especially corner outfielders. So going to be interesting to see how we get all of these guys playing time over the coming years, especially since we do have Vasquez locked up for the long term now. But it's a good problem to have with all of these good bats. And we've made it to July 30th now, the day before the trade deadline. 4.5 game lead over the Twins and the Guardians. So kind of doing what we need to do. No longer have the best record in baseball. You can see we're a game behind both the Cubs and the Padres now, and also essentially, a game behind the Nationals for the best record in baseball. So although we have the best record in the American League, you can see the American League is pretty tight. Our 4.5 game lead is a lot bigger than the 1.5 lead that the Angels have in the West and the 1 game lead that the Yankees have in the East. There's no obvious holes on our team. Still first in the American League in runs scored. Still first in the American League in runs allowed. But our winning percentages have been steadily declining each month throughout the year. So I'm certainly going to spend a little time perusing the trade block. We've talked a lot about our financial situation this year, and we've got a ton of money available to take on some contracts. So I'm certainly going to look at what's out there. At the very least, think we can potentially bring on a big-time bullpen arm maybe, and although we don't have any glaring holes in our lineup, if there's someone with a big contract that we can get for a relatively low price, certainly going to look at all the options out there as we attempt to repeat. And there are definitely a few interesting bullpen arms available on the trade block, highlighted by Santiago Suarez, closer for the Blue Jays. You can see excellent stuff, excellent control, very good movement, incredible changeup, very good sinker. 27 saves this year with a 1.31 ERA. Over the course of his career has been a well above average pitcher, making $21.6 million this year. But we'll consider him, and then a couple of former Royals, Reed Goleman, who was an important reliever for us for many seasons on the trade block from the Yankees. Can see over the course of his career has put up a 157 ERA plus, 66 FIP minus. You may recall that he is the pitcher that we traded away in our 2027 season when we ended up winning our first World Series, and we traded him to the Seattle Mariners. picked up Julio Rodriguez, who ended up being the World Series MVP for us that year. So it definitely hurt to get rid of Goleman, and he's had a really nice career. But maybe time to reunite him with the Royals, depending on what the Yankees' asking price is. And then also Austin Roberts, who was our longtime closer. We moved on from him, and when we did move on from him, it was a important trade, we thought at the time. We picked up Gordon Graceffo, who you can see now is in AAA Durham at this point. Is his stuff not working out too well at the major league level this year, where he granted only has pitched a third of an inning, but did give up a hit and 3 walks and three runs in that third of an inning that he pitched. So it was an important acquisition for us at that point, and Roberts was making a lot of money. But you can see he was our closer for a good stretch, led the league in saves in 3 out of the 6 years that he was our closer. So we'll have to see what the asking prices are for Roberts, Goleman, and Suarez. Again, we don't have any huge holes on the team, but certainly could move on from a Dylan Carter or even potentially a Bryce Hubbard or an Andrew Bonds at the back end of our bullpen, if we can bring one of those big-time pitchers on board. And interesting, our old buddy Austin Roberts has exercised his no-trade clause, so he does not want to come back to Kansas City. We'll see what happens with Goleman. And at least they're willing to negotiate. And they've got a small list of players that they'd accept, so there might be something we can do. This is interesting right here. We've got Fernando Caldera down in AA. He's just organizational depth for us. You can see he was in the majors the last few years. He was a free agent who we signed right at the start of the season, hitting just $176 down in AA. Clearly the Yankees must have a need at catcher, but would definitely be willing to give him up for Goleman. Let's just see, in comparison, what it would take to pick up Santiago Suarez. And it's a stronger group that we'd have to give up for Suarez. You can see a lot of the real big prospects in our system, and then a lot of our top young talent at the major league level is what they're looking for. So certainly the price for Goleman certainly seems the most reasonable at this point. And the things that I don't love about Goleman are that he's fragile and that he doesn't have a ton of stamina. But he still is a very effective reliever with a 1.98 ERA out of the bullpen for the Yankees this year. And they're just not looking for much for him. As I mentioned, Caldera is just a guy we picked up as a free agent 4 months ago. He's just institutional depth for us. He's 32 years old, almost 33 years old. There's no reason for us not to give him up to pick up a player like Goleman. We'll see how much money we can get the Yankees to hold on to on his contract. Not that we don't have money to spend, but want to be as prudent as possible. Now, I didn't realize that Goleman's actually signed next year. That's less attractive for us. We've gotten the Yankees to pick up 40% of his contract, but I'd like to get them a little higher. If we can get them to pay half the money, they're looking for a good player to do that, unfortunately. I don't really want to give up any of these players that they're looking for. They're big-time major league pitchers, or they're big-time prospects for us. We knock it down to 45%. It's still a pretty interesting crew. Yeah, we'll just have to go with the 40%, and honestly, we'll deal with the fact that his contract for next year is probably not optimal for us. We're going to have a little over $9 million. The Yankees are going to retain around $6 million, I think. So if I'm doing that math correctly. So, I don't know that I want to be spending over $9 million for a reliever next season, but we should be able to get him off the books. He's a fly ball pitcher who's only throwing in the high 80s at this point. Now I'm starting to second guess myself whether we should do this deal or not. I feel a little better. He's always only thrown in the high 80s. So he's been a pretty effective pitcher over the course of his career doing that. And we're just not giving up much for him except taking on some money. So we are going to go ahead and complete the trade, move on from Caldera. Fans pleased that we brought on Goleman. And 8 years after we said goodbye to him to bring on Julio Rodriguez in an effort to win our first championship, we're bringing Reed Goleman back now in 2035 and hope that he will be a big piece of helping this team win its fourth championship. And looking at the top batters that are available, I really like our infield. As we've talked about, we've got tons of depth in the outfield. Just no one here who really excited me. Was a little intrigued by catcher Carlos Franco. You can see he's been a 5-time All-Star over the course of his career, a bit above average as an offensive player, and a above average defensive catcher, but not an exceptional defensive catcher. He's making $27.6 million this year, and he's fragile. He's 32 years old. I'm not really all that interested in him. We'll see what they're looking for. And they're actually looking for a lot for him. I'm pretty happy with our catching situation, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Angelo Bolden, all-star for the second year in a row, or for the second time in his career. Batting average down to .264, but he's better defensively, although not quite as good offensively, most likely. And then Leo Aguilar, excellent defensively, is really a nice, solid backup catcher. So if they were going to give away Franco, may have been interested, but you can see they're looking for top prospects, really not even prospects anymore. I guess Medina is a prospect, but after, I don't want to say suffering through having him on the roster this year, because he's hit .274 for us with 12 homers and 226 at-bats, but after investing that roster spot in him as a Rule 5 acquisition for this whole year, don't want to give him up for a catcher who might be a very small upgrade for us. So it's going to be a pretty quiet trade deadline for these Royals unless we suffer some major injury over the next 24 hours. And it looks like the addition of Reed Goleman is really the only move we're going to make. And as we're getting ready to turn the clock into August, you may have noticed Caleb Lagerwell actually was suspended out for another 5 games, which isn't optimal. But he's still having a nice year for us. Borgman looks like he's injured for another day. Whit Jr. still out for another week. The key thing with both of these guys is to have them healthy for the playoffs. Borgman, certainly our top pitcher coming off of a Cy Young Award season, and Whit Jr., certainly our best overall day-to-day player. I wouldn't say he's as good a hitter as Alex Vasquez at this point, but when you throw in the wonderful defense that we get from Whit Jr., his speed on the base paths, he's the best all-around player on our team, even though he is now 35 years old. So the big question for August is going to be, can we get them both rehabbed and healthy over the next 1 to 2 weeks and back on the major league roster? And then can we keep them healthy as we head down the home stretch of this season and towards the playoffs? And we are now into August. past the trade deadline, taking a look at the standings, up 4.5 on the Twins, 5.5 on the Guardians. Still definitely in the mix for the best record in baseball with the Nationals, Cubs, and Padres. Bobby Whit Jr., despite the injury, still has enough at-bats to qualify for the batting title, so he's up there in batting average and OPS. It's actually kind of crazy. Even after missing most of the entire past month, he's still third in the American League in batter WAR. Mcneil from Boston, their excellent shortstop, who's brilliant defensively and also a pretty darn good hitter. 325, 25 home runs, 25 stolen bases, and a brilliant defense. So it was probably unlikely that Whit Jr. was going to have more WAR than him, and probably unlikely that Whit Jr. was going to win the MVP award over him, because although the Red Sox are 52-59, which is a pretty sickly record, they're only 4 games behind in the AL East, so they are in the running in the American League East, where the Yankees are leading the division, even though they are right now only a game over 500. So rough year for the AL East, and a pretty strong year for the AL Central this year. And as we get ready for these final 2 months of the season, you can see we did play a little better in July than we did in June. Still first in the AL in runs scored, still first in the AL in runs allowed. So I don't think over this playthrough we've ever had a year where we were the best offense and the best pitching staff in the same season. So that's kind of a secondary goal of ours, to hold on to that over the next couple of months. Obviously, the primary goal at this point is to make sure that we retain the lead in the American League Central, get a first-round bye, and hopefully at the very least clinch home field advantage through the American League playoffs. Secondary goal would obviously be to ensure that we've got home field advantage throughout all of the playoffs. And we'll find how we do in those quests in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.